Morning here. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I am Michelle Pacansky-Brock, and I'm faculty mentor for CVC and @ONE. We provide professional development to all California community colleges in support of equitable and effective online teaching and learning. And today's session is really exciting. I'm so happy to welcome Dr. Jamie Thomas here today for her. I believe it's your first webinar / workshop you've hosted for us, but Jamie is not new to @ONE. She is one of our fantastic facilitators, our course facilitators. She's been facilitating our equity and culturally responsive teaching in the online environment course for quite some time now. So want to acknowledge Jamie's contributions there. Jamie is also assistant professor of linguistics at Santa Monica College, and you can follow Jamie on Twitter at Jamie is James. So I'm going to pass it on over to Jamie to get us started.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for sticking with us this afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the world, this beautiful day. And let me just make sure I have access to share my screen. It's that phrase you always hear when you're on these Zooms. And so let me just ask for access because I'm not entirely sure I have it. And while I'm saying that, I'm going to say that we are going to begin with an activity just shortly. So I hope you're staying close to the mouse on your screen, or you've got your thumbs ready to do a little bit of scrolling and zooming in just a moment. But, you know, I wanted to share this with folks because I have learned so much over the course of my time at Santa Monica College, where I teach linguistics. And one of the things that got me so jazzed to be at Santa Monica College and at a community college was the explicit emphasis on the success of students, on the student experience, and on making sure that more students make it to the finish line. And so that has been just an explicit joy of my experience teaching community college students of many wonderful kinds. And so let me make sure that you can now see this, all right? And so today the topic is from gotcha to you got this. And these words came to mind when I was thinking about what I'm trying to do with my own students, which is take them from a gotcha mindset, like I, as your instructor, I'm out here to get you. I'm out here to trick you. Take them from that feeling to, hey, I'm your guide from the side. I'm your facilitator. I'm your co-constructor of this learning experience. And so that's the you got this vibes. And so hopefully today we walk away with some online teaching strategies that help us uplift our students, build more interactivity, and help us to increase retention. Everyone on this Zoom has experienced the challenges of this ongoing global health crisis. And so many of these challenges are still being felt by our students and by ourselves. And consequently, all of these stressors come into the online learning space. And I am trying to thoughtfully think about how do I engage in a meaningful way that doesn't take away from the challenges or the experiences that my students are having, but acknowledges them, uplifts them, and makes them a part of the learning experience. Okay, so let's continue forward. So wanting to talk about activities that you can incorporate into Canvas, and many of us use Canvas on a regular basis to host our online learning materials and to host a lot of our different exercises for learning as well, including discussion exercises.
Jamie, can I interrupt you? I'm so sorry to
Yeah, it looks
interrupt
like
you.
folks aren't seeing things
Yeah,
too
I
well.
was just gonna say,
Okay.
for some reason, the slides, they're really pixelated. I've never seen
Wow.
this happen before. I'm just wondering what setup do you have on your site? Are you using Google Slides or PowerPoint or,
Using PowerPoint.
and you're in presentation mode?
Okay, folks are feeling like it's getting a little bit
It is
better.
getting a little better. It's
Okay.
really interesting. I've never seen this happen before with
Hey
Zoom.
guys, hey, we know this, all this tech stuff in the online world. It just
Yeah.
you have to kind of stay with it, don't we?
Okay.
Let me give this one more try for us.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it just needs to flesh something out.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Appreciate the flexibility.
Huh.
And so perhaps that's working. Is that any better?
It's going in and out of focus. It's
Okay.
really interesting.
Okay.
Let me just see if
I'm
there's.
sorry about that. It may be better if I keep it in this view and
No, I
just
think
clean up
the
the view.
other way is actually better. I
Better.
think we should
Okay.
just keep going if that's if
Forgive me.
yeah, let's do it. I
Okay.
put it back into presenter mode and let's just see if
You
it
got
kind of
it.
works itself out.
You got it.
It is looking a little better. So let's
Okay.
just roll with it.
Thank you. It could be my internet connection. Another reason why I love asynchronous learning, because sometimes that gives us some natural workarounds around synchronous tech. At any rate, wanting to just infuse some of my energy into this moment and help us think about strategies that are helpful in terms of inclusion for all students, and especially when we're thinking about assessment. Okay. All right, so maybe things are getting better, maybe they're not. I'm hating this for you, trust me. Okay, and so I did want to start with a little bit of an activity, and that way, maybe that'll give us a chance to pivot and I can try to work on my slides a little bit more. But I think what we'll do now is I want us to try using Padlet. This may be a tool that you've used with your students. I like using it because it has a lot of asynchronous applications, or let's put it this way, you can apply it asynchronously. And so what I'm going to do now is I have some instructions for you just popped up on your screen. When you hear the music, and hopefully the music comes through, or you're going to see a stoplight, a green traffic light, and you're going to click on the link in your Zoom chat, and this is going to take you to a website. When you get to the website, try to add a positive message to our page, okay? And this can be a message of your choice. You can stay anonymous if you like. You can add your general location. It's okay to be anonymous here. And then when the music stops, or I'll like yell out something, then you can return to our Zoom session. All right, so let me go ahead and put that link in here. Here's the link. And I appreciate all of your suggestions in the chat. Here's the link to our Padlet page. And let's see if we're ready to go.
Give me the
All right, check out that link. And let's see what happens when you add your voice to
I'm
that
ready to
Padlet
go right now. I'm ready to go right now. I'm ready to go right now. I'm ready to go right now. I see you move, I'm checking your smile, working your back like it's going out of style. Shake just a little bit faster, shake just a little now, girl. I'm dying to meet you, so let's mess around. Got an obsession with us getting down. Come just a little bit closer, I just need permission, so give me the green light, give me just one night. I'm ready to go right now, I'm ready to go right now. We could go all night, give me the green light. Do I have a girlfriend? Well, technically, no.
Okay. Uh-oh. The music ran out. I think we might need some more music. Let's go for it.
Give me the green light.
I think we need a little bit more time on
Give
there.
me just one
Go for it.
night. I'm ready to go right now.
Let's
I'm ready to
see.
go right now.
Okay. Let's see if we can sort this out.
I'm ready to go right.
Let's see. One moment. And so actually, let me share with everyone what I'm looking at. And so everyone can now see the Padlet, and you can see that a whole bunch of people are adding their voice to it. And you can add by going to the pink circle there on the right, clicking the edit button. You can put in a location like Vancouver. And then, hi everyone. Loving to see you. And then you can publish that message and you can add it into our map. And it is super, super fun to see where everyone is ending up. And this is really great, especially when you have a lot of international students, which has been happening particularly during the pandemic. So folks are posting pictures, you can add a GIF image, anything you like. And so here's a link to the Padlet, and you can add all throughout our time together, and we'll come back and we'll check on this after we make it through some more ideas.
I'm ready to go right now. I see you move. I'm checking your smile. Working
So
your
some
back
thoughts
like you're
about
just going out of
accessibility.
style. Shake
Thank
just
you.
a little bit.
All right, but thank you so much for just checking this out, just giving it a try. Really, really appreciate it. And
Hey,
it's just,
Jamie,
uh-huh.
that was super cool. I just want to
Oh,
say that I've
yay!
used Padlet for years, and I know I'm like, well, how is she? You're still gonna have to show me how you do it because I don't know how you did it. But we are having another strange issue with your screen sharing.
Oh, okay.
So now there are these dark gray blocks that are covering
Oh,
parts
okay.
of the screen.
That's
So
okay.
here's what I want you to do. When you click share screen this time, go to the bottom of this share screen window and select it says optimize for something. Try that and see if it's better.
Okay, I am optimizing. And again, thanks everyone for your flexibility.
And interestingly, it looks like some people weren't seeing the boxes that I was seeing. So I
Oh,
got a
okay.
comment from someone else that was seeing it. So there is, and you may be stuck in between strange Zoom updates that are still a little buggy. So
Now, you know what? That could happen. I was on Zoom a little bit earlier today, and this is an aside, but it did automatically update something.
okay.
So I apologize if that's kind of intervening in
Okay,
things right
so
now.
I see your whole screen now and it looks clearer than it did last time. So
Okay.
let's go.
Appreciate it.
So
appreciate
sorry.
it. No. It's just a tech thing. But hey, I just really appreciate everyone giving that a try. And here's the link again. I encourage you to check the page anytime throughout our day-to-day. Because as folks add to the page, add their voice to the page, add their location, you will see that page update and you can refresh it as many times as you want. Okay, but there's other lists, other functions that you can use Padlet for, and it's great for lists, it's great for note taking. And there are lots of different functionalities that people employ it for, and Padlet is always updating and adding different features. I should add that it is free. You can create up to 3 Padlets with a free account. And so that's super, super helpful. I still use the free account and just kind of update things here and there. And, so let's keep thinking about what the capabilities are for using Padlet in your course, for example. But I will show you in just a moment how I incorporate it into my course and how it's super, super helpful. And so there may be other collaborative tools that you're using with your classes. And for some folks, they can get some of the similar functionality out of Google Jamboard. And I end up calling these sticky note discussions because folks can just add like a kind of a sticky note looking thing and put some thoughts. Google Slides, some folks like using this as a whiteboard of sorts if they just create empty slides and give their class the link, and everyone can kind of work simultaneously. And this is particularly helpful during synchronous Zoom sessions. But again, thinking about what your favorite tools are, and feel free to drop those into the chat as well. And so I like thinking of Padlet and this map functionality as something of a fascinating new thing. And so let me just play this sound clip for you.
Fascinating new thing. You delight me, and I know you're speaking of me. Fascinating new thing.
And so all throughout, I'm going to try to sprinkle in some sounds, fascinating new thing, just to help us think about and bring our creativity to this moment. But, I love the built-in map feature to Padlet because it means that as an educator, I don't have to configure anything. It's already connected to Google, so folks can just drop a fictitious location or their personal location. And I generally tell my students, hey, just give us your vague location. You can tell us your country. And sometimes students will put an aspirational country or where their heritage lies, and it just makes it super, super fun. And so here's a view of actually the current Padlet that I call our Ling 1, my courses, Linguistics 1, our Ling 1 encouragement board for my current class. And so this just debuted in my class last week. And you can see here that I started off with a post where maybe I throw a GIF image in there or something. And I try to start it off with a sample tone that just really tries to encourage folks. And I post this Padlet in my Canvas course towards this midpoint of the semester, just past the midpoint. So when my students encounter it, it's a way of checking in, it's a way of pushing folks forward, and it's a way of building interactivity at what tends to be kind of a downward slump. Everyone's getting tired at this point in the spring semester. And this works for my 12-week courses and my 16-week courses, and during the summer and winter, also my 6-week courses. So this is just a really great way to check in. And so here you can see a message from a student who's sort of responding to that prompt that I put out there, saying, "You're doing amazing. Make sure you're taking care of your needs and remind yourself it's okay to be human." And I love this message from the student because students always take things in many, many directions, right? And here they're throwing out a very human vibe. And a lot of times with @ONE, what I've learned from @ONE is that it's really, really worth it to spend time thinking about how can we humanize the online learning experience. And I think this is one of those tools that helps us do that if we kind of set a tone to facilitate that. And here the students are telling us that encouragement within the course can actually extend beyond the course. And here's a student adding something for adding a location that's aspirational, their home country of Nicaragua, telling us all to have a great day and remember to smile. All of these things just bring joy into that online space. And often we think of online learning, especially asynchronous learning, as somewhat isolated, but it doesn't have to be. These are ways of building interactivity into the moment. And so here's an example of students going with their creativity. When we put out a prompt that allows for agency, we can get all kinds of responses. And here you can see how I've responded to the student. They put up a GIF image from The Office, And with a caption there, we are working our way through this semester and killing it. And so, or rather killing it. And so I wrote back and said, you're right, we are killing it. Thank you, friend, right? So my students, they can choose to stay anonymous on here. And I use this as an ungraded activity, optional. And so when you kind of allow for that, that gives space for this to really be something that brings joy to the class. And so how do students feel? Well, I was lucky enough to see a post from a student just last week on our encouragement board that sort of commented on this, and I want to share that with you. The student writing from San Mateo, California, saying, hey, y'all, I want to say congratulations for making it this far in the semester. It has been really fun for me to see the way y'all think about language and linguistics and to learn more about you and your experiences. And so actually, as an educator or the Padlet creator, you can expand the individual messages to make those more visible for you. And let me show you how to do that. So you can click on those 3 little dots in a vertical sequence. And that will open up a page where you can kind of focus your vision on just one of those messages from the student. And so let's take another look at what this student was saying. First, they opened up with an encouraging phrase. And, you know, I think this goes back to the tone that I really work hard to set from the very beginning of the course. I use a liquid syllabus. I send a welcome email prior to the start of the course. And in these messages and in that syllabus, I am setting a tone of encouragement and setting a tone about online etiquette that I want us to really build community. And this carries over into this activity as well. And so the student is acknowledging that our course has been a space that allows them to see other people through personal lenses. Thank you for sharing about things that are often personal, the student says. And the student even discloses, I was unsure how I'd be able to interact with my peers in a remote class, yet here we are, okay? And then goes on to say, I feel like I truly know some of y'all, and it's been a real privilege for me. And then closes with another encouraging phrase, keep it up. We're over halfway there. And so Annette has just added into the chat, what is a liquid syllabus? A liquid syllabus, and I'm sure Michelle can speak to this so well because I have learned from her. A liquid syllabus is a dynamic syllabus in the form of an online website that can be more easily updated than a PDF that maybe you hand out to your students or you email to your students. And the liquid syllabus kind of does the work of when we structure it that way, of individual tabs for different policies and textbooks and things like that. And in just a moment, actually, I can loop back and share with you a vision of a view of my liquid syllabus as well. And so what I thought was interesting, though, about this student's comment was that they actually are sharing their initial ambivalence about distance learning. But feeling over the course of the semester, and thank you everyone in the chat for sharing your liquid syllabus samples, that this has been an encouraging experience. And the encouragement board is a way of allowing students the space to really speak to that. And so how to incorporate this Padlet into Canvas? I think there's a lot of different ways. I'm going to try to show you the method that I did. And so here you're seeing a view of my Canvas page. Clicking on modules, I'm kind of scrolling to week 9, where I incorporate this out of a 12-week or a 16-week structure. And it's actually a page that is an external URL page. And I'll show you in just a moment more of how I set that up. Okay, so just going through modules, and you're seeing like kind of my course design there, and presenting the encouragement board in the first part of the module, and then at the end of that module, or the second linked module, I put the page again so that they will encounter it again in sequence and be able to see an updated page as more people have a chance to engage with it. And so creating a new Padlet. This is me kind of going through the process of creating Padlet. You can see there's lots of different ways that Padlet will show up as a map, as a grid, and so forth. And so this is me creating the Padlet that we're using today. I changed the title. And something important is you want to make sure that you're changing a few settings to make it publicly available. And that really works well for a huge class. Thanks so much, Tracy. So making sure everybody can write on the page if you have it public. There's also an edit setting, but I don't want everybody to edit it or have moderator privileges. I just want them to be able to add their voice. Okay. And so then I add it to Canvas as an ungraded activity and as an external URL page. And so you might have just heard a little bit of sound there. The phrase was "make it easy on yourself." And I love this little song. It's from Dionne Warwick, like back in the day. But here, let's just listen to that clip again, because I think that's my mantra as an online educator is, let me see how I can make this easiest on myself. All right. And so what you're seeing here is just in that modules view of Canvas, I am clicking on the plus sign when I create a new module, and then that allows me to add different types of activities or pages, and then I'm going to add an external URL page. Okay, and so these sound clips, I've actually added them to my PowerPoint. But if I want to share music with my students, I actually will embed it in the page, in a Canvas page, I can think and try to show you how I've done that as well, because I love sharing some of my favorite songs with them, or directing them to a YouTube music video, something like that. Okay, let me make sure I've got everything going here. Okay, and so after I choose external URL, then it gives me a chance to add in the actual URL or the website address of the Padlet that I've created. And so I'll need to do that as well. But then I put in the page name, and then zoop, I can add the item. And now that is now listed with this link icon under the module that I've created. And so, yeah, I mean, I love what Meg is saying in the chat, that they embed the Padlet on the Canvas page so that students don't have to click and go to a separate page. I love doing that as well. And that's how it sort of shows up within my Canvas. So, I mean, I thought of doing this because I've always been seeking interactivity. I like things when they're in motion and making connections. And so I think that's a motivator as well. And so before we go further, I have one more song for you. Let's see if you can guess the name of the song or the vibe of the song or the singer. And I will give voice to the lyrics as well.
Now, I don't claim to be an A student, but I'm trying to be.
Uh-oh, you guys are really good at this. The person said, I don't claim to be an A student, but I'm trying to be. And many of you guessed Sam Cooke. Oh, nice work. Nice work. From What a Wonderful World.
Don't know much trigonometry. Don't know much about algebra. Don't know what a sliding rule is for.
All right. And so, you know, when I'm working, I don't know what you guys do when you're working, but maybe if it's not music, then I'm having something visual on in the background with the sound off. Just things, because we are so much in the online space and we're so much on our computers. We need other stimuli to keep us going while we're doing this stuff. So what a wonderful world. So, thinking about this interactivity that I've been seeking, when I was in the physical classroom space, I was really trying to have students work together and look at a lot of different things hands-on. And because I focus on linguistics and languages and how languages work, I had students, for example, looking at different language samples together and working that out, trying to come up with the rules for different languages. And this is Arabic in the foreground. And then also experimenting with having students do their quizzes in really interactive formats. And so actually moving together their desks and talking through the questions and then writing down their own answers. But what's important about this space is that it's actually a very physical space. So we have paper, we have pencils, we're able to see each other in real time. And when you go online, the shift is really real, right? Those capabilities are not available in the same ways and they don't feel the same. And so here's a view of the quiz that actually the students were working on. And this was right before we called it quits on classroom physicality. But you can sort of see that one of the things that I was doing there on the left was having students visualize key concepts. And so saying, draw a diagram that connects, that shows the relationship between these different terms, like deaf with a capital D, deaf with a lowercase d, interpreters, codas or children of deaf adults, and hearing as also an identity pertaining to language. And also here on the right, you're seeing a question that I came up with about draw a diagram to illustrate yourself in relation to the languages you speak or use, the communities that you are a part of and so forth. And so always trying to both activate metacognitive strategies and also personalize the curriculum. Because when we're thinking about racial equity in the classroom, it's really about providing more space for students to see themselves in the curriculum and also see their success. And in my instructions, the instructions are also designating space and time for peer learning in the interaction as well. So with all of this happening, then how do I bring this into kind of an online space? And you can see just really enjoying students talking with each other, leading each other, facilitating each other's learning. And here, one of my students has a brain hat. Everyone created sort of a brain hat to talk about, create like a paper model of the human brain and its locations for language. But, one of the things I've realized, and this is in surveying my class, is that back in 2020, many students were saying, we had a fair amount of students, maybe a third of students saying, yeah, this was my first time taking an online course. And by now, that number has really diminished. The experience is so much greater with online learning. And so there's a lot that you can do now with students that may have been exceptionally new before. And I think it's really cool to be able to build on that capability by really leaning into the affordances of online teaching and learning. And so thinking about this shift, right? This shift happened. It happens, right? And we all feel this. So I went from in-person pair work to group office hours, for example, on Zoom, from paper quizzes and tests to online submissions only. And a meaningful way to acknowledge the stress, the stressors, and the hardship of a lot of these early pandemic learning conditions, that was where my mind went to. Let's support each other visually, meaningfully, visibly in the course. And especially for those students who didn't choose fully online learning to begin with, but now found themselves in this situation. And that was where I came up with the idea of the encouragement board, to kind of create a visible space within the course for interactivity and for explicitly acknowledging, hey, this is a tough time. And so here you're seeing our page from, I think, spring 2020 or fall 2020. And a student sort of making a comment like, 3 more weeks left of the semester, you guys, we are kicking butt, in an emoji there, even through this pandemic. and good luck on finals. So students really lean in to this space to be able to encourage each other. And if you click on the icon there to see a comment, I think then you can see my comment. And I just went ahead and leaned in and I said, oh my God, hell yeah. Thanks for your encouragement, friend, right? Because this offers me an opportunity to reach back and acknowledge students and really push them to keep going, let them know it's worth it, let them know that I see them, even if we're not meeting together in a physical space. But at the same time, really realizing that online learning is its own thing, right? We don't have to compare it to the physical classroom because it really can do so many different things for us. And so that's where I love this idea of encouragement, of thinking, you got this, right? And as online educators, we do have this, we can do this. And our students are with us on this. Encouragement, and I'm a linguist, so I love puns, I love language. And what I found with just opening up that space for encouragement is that sometimes students remind us more what is important about the educational journey, that it's important to make human connections, that it's important to take space to realize how far we've come. And it's important to seek help and seek acknowledgement from instructors and peers within the learning space. That's all part of the educational journey. And I think it's something really special about community college too. There's more of an acknowledgement, I think, at the community college level. And I can say this having taught at small liberal arts colleges and back east, that is, and also during my graduate years at Michigan State University. There's more of an acknowledgement of the challenges that are a part of everyone's educational journey, big and small. And so thinking again about that pandemic shift, and what's really interesting for me is that, and now I don't even think to compare and try to mirror that on-ground interactivity. Now I'm seeking for things that can only be done online as opposed to in the classroom. I really want to take advantage of the online space. Yeah. And so, yes, Fabiola, I'm really leaning into what can be done now that these technologies are available for the benefit of all students. And so I think some of you can relate to that picture there on the right. I think you know what that is. It's a Scantron. And for some folks, that just gives this element of absolute terror, because they can feel the sweat pouring down their brow. They can hear the sharpening of the number 2 pencil, and they can feel themselves making so many mistakes, right? And it hurts. So for many students, that's already a gotcha moment. And it just, the anxiety just starts to build up. And, over here on the left, you're seeing a view of my final exam. My first semester teaching at Santa Monica College was in fall 2019. And so when I got there, I was like, I was used to teaching maybe 30 students max per semester, in 2 courses max per semester. And then I really made a jump when I came to Santa Monica College. And now I had 5 courses. I had almost 200 students in 1 semester. And I almost felt compelled to use Scantrons because I was still trying to get a handle on how many students and the volume of trying to provide feedback in a timely manner and assessment in a timely manner. And so you can see I've got, you must, even though I'm still saying you've got this, the tone is struggle, right? And so maybe you felt a need to use Scantron in your teaching as well. And, I think it's worthwhile to kind of pause and think about what those pressures are, because those pressures are really real on us when we're teaching at high volume and we're talking about scaling up the capacity of our courses and everything. And so, a lot of students, for me, it was a lot of students. And and timing and constraints on grading and feedback. Those were things that had me feeling like, okay, this is the first time I'm going to use Scantron in my life as an educator, but I'm going to give it a try. Because I wanted something that would be efficient, that would be replicable, and that would be familiar to students. And the Scantron accomplishes all of those things in a way. Students are very familiar with it, but they're also familiar with feelings of anxiety and for some students, the opposite of success. I don't even want to say the F word in this encouraging space today. All right. And so now you're seeing the evolution of my tests. By winter of that academic year, just before the pandemic, I had settled on upgrading my strategy. I included an image that I thought spoke to belonging and really tried to encourage my students. I think it also confused the students because they weren't used to seeing an encouraging message on a test. They were like, let's get this test over with. And I was like, no, take your time, enjoy it, have fun, right? And they were like, fun with the test, what? And so on the right, you can see some of the questions that I was asking in this particular test. And, you know, as someone who really likes to make a lot of connections between material, one of the challenges of using multiple choice as a format is that it already carries this air of gotcha-ness to students. And it takes you away sometimes from being able, or the volume of teaching these students takes you away from being able to use short answer questions. Because my ability to respond to a multitude of those is limited time-wise and everything. And so that can push me into having to come up with dichotomized choices in tests. And I will actually even share with you, so the main difference between test 1 and test 2 that you're seeing on the left is that on this test number 2 here, I have like an image that says, you belong here, I believe in you, you've got this. And that's part of the sort of test instructions on the first page of the booklet, as it were. And also in this test, I'm allowing open book. That was a new step for me. And handwritten class notes. I said, hey, let's just go for it. Let's see how that turns out. And it turned out actually pretty decent, but I still felt forced into dichotomized choices. Okay. And so what does it look like then when I take a test where I've built in interactivity and I put it into an online space? And so this is what it looks like. You have a student making an initial post in response to a prompt. Their response is about 2 minutes long, and I set a 2-minute limit on the responses, and then they get responses from other peers in the course. And ultimately, this same student, Chloe, from one post, she got 4 different peer responses. And you're seeing the second response just repeated in the second column. But 2 of those responses were with video and 2 more responses with audio only. Thinking about what online platforms allow us to do is give more agency in how students respond. And again, I had the same underlying conditions. I had a lot of students. I had timing constraints on grading and feedback. I had, I was looking for something efficient, something replicable, something familiar to students. And in the online space, Flipgrid now serves as my platform for running my tests. And I do this because if I use Flipgrid at the beginning of the semester and sort of a getting to know you, hey, how's it going activity, now it's familiar to students if they haven't ever used the platform before. The platform can be integrated into Canvas. And so that makes it more efficient to use it. Students who are no-shows to a test, remember when that was happening in person, a student couldn't make it to a test and then you needed to reschedule or get them an appointment with the testing center. And now no-shows can just catch up on their time, right? Because we have this asynchronous format. And the efficiency of it too also comes in because now students needing extended time, that can really be facilitated easily because we can just open up the exercise and give them almost infinite time that they need. So there are a lot of positives to running a test asynchronously and also running it in this format. Students who are users of sign languages can also use this space, and the automated captions have gotten a lot better over the last few years. And so that's even getting better as well. And so here in this view, you're seeing the prompt that I have for this test. And Flipgrid gives you information about how many hours of student engagement and so forth are happening with your test. And so with this one, I got full participation from my class and 11.2 hours of engagement, which is actually something kind of exciting to be able to quantify from an assignment that you give to students and a test that you give to students, right? That they're really engaging with that test. And so you can see here that my instructions are about, please say your name, right? And tell us something that you have studied together, that we have studied together this semester that has expanded your appreciation of how language works. So I begin the test by asking them to talk about something they have liked, something that has connected for them. And then I ask them to give me some of the nitty gritty. Then I say, mention at least one key term or key concept from our opening units in the course. Provide a definition in your own words of that key term or concept. And then explain in detail how it applies to your personal life. And I give them a little prompting there, and I say, hey, that's the most important thing. Okay. And then you can see the timeline of how I've set this up, so that I ask for initial comments by Thursday, and then I ask for replies by Saturday. And that way I'm setting the test up to actually take a whole week for asynchronous engagement and responses and thinking about the material. So this really works for students who get really anxious about time constraints on tests, or need more time to plan, would like more time to review the material. And so it actually encourages engagement, because in order to respond meaningfully and with a personal edge, they need to go back and review a little bit. And it behooves them to kind of think about the material a little bit more. And so let's take a look at one of the student responses here.
Hi, my name is Dekel, and something that I've learned in this class that has helped me better understand language and better appreciate language is the fact that I'm finally able to put a definition to experiences that I've gone through and haven't really been able to express so well until I learned the key concepts of receptive ability and productive ability. Receptive ability includes our ability to understand what is being said to us in a specific language. And productive ability is the way that we're able to produce our own words, like on a certain topic or within a conversation. So these concepts have definitely helped me understand how I communicate with other people, especially my family. So I grew up in a bilingual household where my second language is Hebrew.
And so you can really see how this student is really engaging with the concepts and tying it back to their personal life. And I find that this really works for students, especially at the introductory level, because these concepts become less abstract. And when you're thinking about linguistics, you're like, oh my God, I can't get my head around it. But sometimes when you can give students a clear imperative to make these connections, it can make a lot more sense for them. Okay.
And
you know, this is some feedback from another student saying, my experience with the test format was actually interesting. And this is where I was having students actually send me some notes about their experiences along the way back in the fall. But they said, you know, usually when it comes to tests, I think of multiple choice questions. But having to talk on video about what I learned and what I found interesting was a new experience, because I can explain it in my own words. And so the student walks away feeling like they've accomplished something by the time they finish with the test. Let's see another student example just really quickly.
The most important concept we have covered this far in the semester is by far communicative competence. Communicative competence is a language user's grammatical knowledge of syntax, morphology, and phonology. And it's also their social knowledge about how and when to use utterances properly. It's important that people all around the world have communicative competence because
So I love this student because they just go right in and they're bringing their personality to it as well. And another student comment, when my classmates watch my video, maybe it can answer their questions and give them a better understanding of the topic. And it gives me a chance to review and understand the material better as well. So students are actually feeling better after they kind of experience this test. Because the test kind of comes as more of a dialogue. And so let's see how a student is dialoguing with another student, how they are responding.
Hey Vincent, this is Heidi. Wow, excellent commentary and self-reflection based on the lessons that we were having about accents. I think that was really cool of you, and it just goes to show you that you are a very humble and self-aware person for you to be able to recognize these different judgments and perceptions that you were having onto others within yourself, and recognizing that was something that you wanted to or you want to work on. And yeah, I agree with you. That lesson on accents was also pretty eye-opening for me as well.
And so that way students are able to get immediate feedback from peers. And often that's happening a lot quicker than I can get to it, right? Because I have my hands in a lot of different pots. Okay. And so why not use this test or use a test as an opportunity to further enjoy learning? This student was really actually saying, I really enjoyed our first test together. And I feel like the test formatting allowed me to convey what I learned about the subject matter. And I think this is really telling as it comes from students, because this is them saying that, right? Of course, I hope, but if you can really walk away from a test with a smile on your face, I think we're winning, right? And so this is another student from this semester as well. Let's listen in.
Hi, I'm Erica Walkingstick. I wanted to use what we've been learning thus far about phonetics to understand more about my grandfather's speech community. A speech community is a group of people who share norms and values about language. And he belonged to a small speech community, and that is the Cherokee community of Oklahoma. And nowadays, only 2,000 people speak the language, which is tragic. It makes me want to learn Cherokee, actually. But my mother used a couple words in Cherokee, and one of them was astuntnagun, which means come to dinner. And I've always noticed that this sound there is no English equivalent to it. We don't use that sound. So I drew an illustration of how it's made. The air comes up through the lungs and it doesn't get out the mouth because it's blocked by the back of the tongue. It comes out the nose to make that sound. Here is the phonetic symbol.
And so what you're seeing here is the student sort of taking the time to share an illustration, and also I have illustration as an activity to study the phonetic, the speech production in the course, but she's now connected it to her personal heritage as a Cherokee tribal descendant, and also showed engagement with key concepts. So when you I think what I've learned from this is that creating a space that goes beyond a multiple choice question really allows students to take it a step further in ways that make sense for them. And so her story is actually really, really beautiful.
Which I got in
And
a Cherokee dictionary.
There's nothing better, right? This is intro level linguistics, yes. And there's nothing better than when a student can actually teach you something. And so I've learned a lot from Erica and Heidi and Vincent and everyone. And so, of course, students find this test format like super new. Many of them have never given video responses for the purpose of a test. And so that's something that's really interesting too, that this would be novel, because at the same time, we are inundated with TikTok and everything else right now. And so this is a technology or a kind of platform that students, for the most part, many of them are basically familiar with the idea. But to bring it into education and assessment in this way, I think is something that really capitalizes on this current generation and this moment, and many of the capabilities that we now have that we didn't have before. And so another student saying, although this was super new, by the end of it, I enjoyed this because I feel like it really got to what I understood. And, you know, if you think back to your own testing experiences in college, I remember college, I was an anthropology major, but one of the key courses for the major that I had to take, I actually almost basically failed the class. And I failed the class, not because I wasn't engaged with the material, and not because I wasn't spending all the time in the library, like finding all the anthro books and everything, but because I couldn't basically guess at what the instructor wanted me to regurgitate for that test. And so if you're thinking about that often a test is about matching the student's guess with the teacher's guess, that if we can open up that experience and allow for students to actually show us what they know, then it's a win-win. Because sometimes students have gotten more out of the material than we as instructors could have ever imagined. And so there's more here about incorporating this into Canvas, but in the interest of time, I just want to show you a couple of things, and I can of course like double back because of course you want to incorporate Flipgrid by doing the integration and so forth. And Flipgrid has instructions for you on this that are really, really clear. The integration, adding in the little codes and things that are generated. And this platform is free, which is something that I really appreciate. And then when you get back to Canvas, you're pasting that information in to add the app. And so that is fairly straightforward. And then when you are creating the test itself, at least the way I've tried it, I create it as an assignment, but then I call it a test. And then I give them a clear prompt for that assignment that also gives examples of what kind of key terms or concepts they could use, but it's not an exhaustive list. So some students will need some of that help to go from dependent learners to independent learners, and that can be really, really helpful for them. And in a different version of this, for part 2 of the test, whereas in the first part I have them define concepts, the second part I ask them to apply the concepts. And what I do is I have them also reply to each other on Flipgrid, but I give them something to watch, or some data to work with, some original data to apply the concepts to. And here I've chosen to take these same concepts that we've studied, but ask them to watch a sort of 15-minute documentary on refugees in Tijuana, Mexico. And these are, this actually focuses on Haitian refugees in Tijuana. And I make the video available to them with English subtitles. It's all in Spanish. And then also Spanish with Haitian Creole subtitles. I don't have too many Haitian Creole speakers in my course, but it does expand their knowledge to know that that language can be written and used in this kind of academic and informative way. And so that's also a learning experience within the test as well, to give visibility to some of these marginalized uses of language. And so, you know, a response from a student is that, you know, including information and materials like this within the testing experience also signals an explicitly inclusive environment. It signals an anti-racist stance about language, that we are seeking to decenter dominant and privileged voices and make space for marginalized voices in the space. And, you know, it's an extreme pleasure when on the other side of the experience, a student can sort of say, I was avoiding taking this subject, and now I'm super glad because I never realized how fun it could be, right? Thinking again about how to provide that encouragement in a way that really sticks with students and has them feeling success that can then take them forward. And I think that's super helpful about focusing maybe the strategy in an introductory course is that I know for sure more advanced instruction may not offer the same flexibility, but a student who has yet to experience success, particularly in assessment, if we can give them just a leg up and one experience of success to carry them forward and say, hey, you can keep going. Take this experience of success with you when you transfer to the next institution or something like that. Then they may have it now to be an independent learner and to feel like that next test is a test where they can succeed. And so just the songs that I shared with you today, Green Light by John Legend, a little bit of Semisonic, throwback to the 90s, Dionne Warwick, of course, and Sam Cooke. And I think we can take just a moment now and come back to our Padlet just as we kind of close out, just to see how that's going. So I'm going to refresh the page and see where all of you posted. Oh my goodness, and it's amazing. Even out in Hawaii, what? I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your pictures from Hawaii.
That's so awesome. I love it too.
Michigan, yeah. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so very much. Making dinner, you're finding beauty everywhere. You are lovely people. Thank you so very much for joining me, and thanks for all of your dynamic comments in the chat. Just really appreciate it. And I think that about does it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jamie Thomas. That was amazing. And I just want to say that you were so cool through all those like screen sharing glitches, because I'm usually not as cool when that stuff happens to me. So bravo to you. Yeah, it all kind of came together. So let me get to the Q&A because we do have some questions. Our first question that I want to honor, because it came in pretty earlier, is from Nadia,
Yes.
and she's asking if you have any suggestions for embedding music in Canvas.
Ooh, yes. So there are some ways to do it. And what I found is, so there's a couple of ways. What I found is really helpful is, of course, maybe the more straightforward is like a link to a video or something like that. If you give me a moment, and I'll go ahead and take the next question while I just search in my course to find you a good example of this, and I will of integrating it in a different way. So
Okay.
I'll work on that. Yeah.
I'm also impressed with how much you can do at one time.
I'm insane.
So Sylvia is asking, you mentioned that students in Flipgrid do have the option to do video or use the microphone only, which is something you do have to enable in Flipgrid. I just want to be sure everybody knows
Oh,
that.
yes. Yes. Thank
But
you.
how many of your students were hesitant or shy to be on video, or had some reason to not want to be on video? Can you speak to that?
Sure. I've had students who met, even though I explicitly will put in the prompt, I'll say, audio only is fine. It's up to you. I'll have students still message me and they'll be like, I was in a car accident. I have like scars and stuff right now. Like, can I not be on video? I'm like, yes, it's okay. So that may be like 5% of each course. For the most part, I find that most people want to engage visually with others. But giving them the choice, I think, makes it less onerous, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm a big believer in that too. And I like it myself to have the option to leave audio
Yeah.
comments sometimes. And then we have a lot of questions about workload and how you do the grading. So I think I'm
Yes.
just going to lump those all together. Like if you were to compare like moving from the testing, the traditional testing to Flipgrid, like what's the workload differential like there? And then how do you grade these?
Oh, great question. So actually, it's a little bit versus paper tests. I think the quality of their feedback is actually better and more meaningful than a Scantron score. Or even when I was grading like short answer questions, it would be like on a separate sheet. And then my hand would start hurting because I'm writing comments and trying to really be encouraging in writing. So I have a kind of like a bank of stored generic comments, and I will like pull up like a sticky note on my Mac computer and kind of have those comments there. And then for each student, I'll have a rubric, and maybe I should, I can share that, but it's just a very general rubric. Hey, did you make comments on time? Or did you sufficiently address the prompt? And did you provide feedback to your friends? And so in that sense, basically I give everybody full credit. It's a real kind of ungrading procedure, because what the time actually takes is me watching the video. So I like to limit the videos to 1:30 or 2 minutes. And then I put in comments, and I put their name in the comment, and I make reference to the types of concepts or the things that that they said. And I use Canvas Speed Grader. Yes, Eileen, to do that and to move fairly quickly through it. So if I try to spend, maybe 3 or 4 minutes on, no more than that, on each student, and move fairly quickly through it. And that's it actually ends up being fairly efficient that way. So it's not too taxing.
Great. And I responded to this in the Q&A, but let's get it in the archive. The videos from Flipgrid that you showed, I'm assuming you downloaded and you put into your PowerPoint, but
Yes.
some folks were asking about the captioning. So can you speak to whether or not there's captioning?
Oh, for sure. So when you're on the Flipgrid platform, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, but when you're on the Flipgrid platform, you can click a little CC icon, just like we kind of have here in the Zoom stratosphere, that will enable some automatic captions. And I think for now, the platform is focused on English for the captions. And of course, like mine, where we're talking about other languages, the captions will fail, but it is helpful. And I have heard some of my international students and English language learners and multilingual students say that the captions are helpful to them.
Excellent. And
Oh,
yes,
and captions are helpful in Russian as well. Thank you, Tess.
thank you for that. Jamie, would you be willing to share your slides if we can figure out how to do that? It's a little more complicated with PowerPoint, especially when you have so much media in there, but there are folks who are interested in kind of, well, let me say this, the archive of this will be available very shortly, okay? But I'm gonna leave it to Jamie to decide if she wants to work with me to figure out how to get the PowerPoint slides shared also online. That's your call, and we can work on it individually. But for anyone who wants to go back and watch things, yeah.
Let me work on doing that. And what I'll do is a small concern would be just to take my students' faces out of it, kind of. But I'd be happy to share the slides with you.
Great. That sounds wonderful. Let's see. I'm looking at the time. We've got maybe time for one more. So Brittany is saying that I really like the video response for testing. Do you have some guidance on the general number of questions that you ask in one test? How many of these video tests do you do in a course? And then do you also supplement with other types of assessments?
Great question. So for my 16-week course, I end up doing this twice, maybe like in the 5th week, and then again in the 9th week or the 10th week. That seems to work really well because it's enough interval of time for me to get to all of the responses and give them feedback before we do this again. And for them to also have covered new content before we get to another test. But I've had students sort of say that with that interval, they really like it because they haven't seen everybody since the beginning of the class when we did like intros or something like that. And so they're like, oh my God, it was so nice to see everyone. So they enjoyed that too. And I usually keep it to maybe like one major prompt for the test. And then, that can have all kinds of permutations of people replying to each other. So even though you're asking maybe 1 or 2 general questions within that prompt, there's a lot of space for engagement in there too.
And when talking about the replies, because there's another question about replies, do you actually require replies, or what's your structure there?
Sure. I ask the students as part of the assignment to reply to at least 2 people. And so they get full credit when they've replied to the 2 people. But I like saying at least, because then that kind of prompts folks to go a step further. And usually that does work.
Great. Thank you so much. You're so generous with your sharing. I know how much work goes into putting these presentations together. So I just want to say thank you. And
Thank you.
aren't you loving the little hearts, the floating
I love
hearts?
this feature.
This
It's
is the
so
first time
cool.
I've seen it. And I'm just so excited that Zoom finally integrated that. I don't know, those
Yeah.
little things.
Super,
I'm
super
sure there are
cool.
people who don't like it, but I find it lovely.
And so one last thing I'll say is,
Yeah.
please do reach out to me, and I'll follow up on that about integrating audio, because I like to do that with speech samples when I'm talking about like sounds and stuff in my class. So I will just put my email here in the chat.
Thank you so much for that. And I want to give you a big thank you for not only sharing these amazing, innovative, student-centered, fun assessment strategies, engagement strategies, but the way you framed online teaching as something that doesn't have to be compared or like face-to-face teaching. I know we've all been through a lot of trauma with not having our classrooms, and that's playing into everything, but I just really appreciate that you framed things that way. And I wanted to give you a big applause for that, because it really is something different. And when we can look at it as something different and also have the privilege of having the time to prepare it intentionally, it can really be a beautiful experience for everyone. So thank you so much. And everyone, thank you
Times
for being here today.
1,000.
Take care, everyone. Be well.
So I guess I'm just going to stay here for a minute, because I'm just happy to see you. See your smiling face.
I know, actually synchronously, huh?
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah,
happen very often.
yeah. But thank you. I was just shortly before this, I was like, oh, I really wanted to include one of the student videos, and I needed